Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi. Now this is part 2 of my deep sea diver Action Man restoration. If you've watched part 1 you'll have seen the sorry state that this figure turned up at toy-polloi, and he's already starting to look a lot better. Now in between doing these videos I've tried a few more techniques about getting his outfit a little bit whiter. Someone suggested to me that a good way of removing the rust stains is to put some lemon and some salt onto the rust stains, or some vinegar and some salt onto the rust stains, and leave it for half an hour. So I tried that and I have to say they improved a little bit, but they're still not perfect. So in between these videos I've been to a toy fair and I actually found another outfit you can see here. Now this outfit was in a pretty terrible state. It's quite nice and white, but all of the seams, if you can see here, have come undone, and I've been slowly working my way through re-sewing it. So you can see I've still got a few more seams to do. The underarm is broken, but I've re-sewn all of this top arm down the legs, so a little bit more sewing, and I think that's actually going to look quite nice. Now this only cost me £1, so I don't normally like just replacing things, but for the sake of £1 this looks a lot better, and it's actually a late release one as well, so it's the same sort of material that original one is in. I also wasn't particularly happy with how loose the legs were still when I finished filming that last video, so an easy way of tightening up the knee joints and the elbow joints is to put the leg on a bit of metal. I've used an old an old lock here or something just to rest it on, and then gently hit a screwdriver with a hammer into the old pivot point, sort of rivet, and you'll tighten up the joint. You do have to be a little bit careful because you don't want to split the plastic, but a gentle tap here and there will tighten up the joints and get the figure standing up a little bit straighter than it did originally. Now this diver's face is looking a lot better. The most of the ink has gone, but his eyebrows are pretty worn, so I'm just going to replace those. I'm using some Humbrol paints. I've got Humbrol paint Black 33 and I'm using RC402, just mixing those two together because RC402 is actually slightly too light, so a little bit of black mixed in with it and you can get a brown that's a pretty close match to the original eyebrows. Then it's just a case of very carefully painting those back on. And there we go, I think that looks a lot better already. The next thing that needs to be fixed for the deep sea diver is his sort of weight belt. I was sent 2 different weight belts with this restoration. This one here, you can see one of the straps has snapped, so that's not going to be usable. And the other one here, both the straps are in place, but it's missing one of the weights again because it's broken off. So what I reckon I can do is actually take the best bits of each of these weight belts and join them together. So my plan is to remove this broken strap and these 2 weights here on this slightly better one, I would say. The weights are held in place. They've obviously been pushed through the plastic, and then looks like it's been the metal has been melted or sort of well, just sort of shaped in such a way that it holds in place on both sides. So what I reckon we need to do is, if I put this in some freshly boiled water, soften the plastic, we should then be able to just gently prise out the metal weights on this one. We can do the same on this one, just take the good weight and band off this one, and then again put it all back in hot water, and should be able to push these little bits of metal back through the plastic on this one, and we'll end up with one good, perfectly usable weight belt with all the bits in place. When I film these videos I always like to have a little test beforehand just to check that I know what I'm doing before I go ahead and film it. So I've done a little bit of a test here, and actually it was worth doing because the first one that I tried to remove, the tiny bit of metal that holds the weight on actually snapped. I think this one was already a little bit damaged. You can see it's quite cracked, so that was a bit of a failure, but I did manage to get the other one off in quite sort of a neat way, so I'm hopeful that we can do all of them. It may be that all these bits of metal are a little bit weak, and we're going to end up having to file them off and then drill a hole in to put a screw to hold them in place, but I'm hoping that we can get them all off. So let's go ahead and we'll try and remove the weights off these 2 before replacing this other band, and we'll see how it works. So as you can hear in the background, I've just boiled the kettle, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this in a bowl and then pour this freshly boiled water on top of it, and that will very quickly soften the plastic, and hopefully we'll be able to remove those weights without damaging them. So here's the boiling water. Now you'll only need to leave this just for a few seconds. You can see immediately that the plastic starts to soften really very quickly, and it's going to be very hot, so I've got a tea towel here just to dry stuff off and so that I don't burn myself. But you should be able to just warm that up enough that we can then place it on here, and if I use the tea towel I should be able to gently prise this off, and hopefully it'll come off like so. You can see it's come off quite easily. I'll do the other side quickly before this cools down. This one's not quite so easy. There we go. That's the other one off. As you can see, just by softening the plastic, it enables you to get these weights out. So what I hope now is that I can take this broken one, we'll get rid of that, and the one I removed off the other one, if I warm this plastic up again, I should be able to then push these back through the holes, and we should have one perfectly good weight belt. So I've just let this plastic soften as much as I can. We can now try and push this back on. It's incredibly hot, so you do have to be quite careful not to burn yourself. See, I think a screwdriver may help that, so I'm just going to warm that up again and get a screwdriver. Now I've got a screwdriver here. That should mean I can push it on a bit easier. And there we have it. That's actually not gone on too badly, so I think I'm going to try the other side, and then hopefully that will be one complete belt. So I'm just going to put that back in the water. It's still pretty warm, this water. I don't think it needs to be that hot, but just a few minutes in that to warm it up, and we'll get this other side on. This one looks a little bit like the metal is cracked, so it may be we have to do this in a different way, but I'm hopeful that we can get this on without breaking that last bit. I think there we have it. Yes, that's pretty good. So there we go. You can see that you can actually swap these about. It's a little bit fiddly, but they do actually go on pretty well. That all seems to have worked pretty well. I would say if you don't have the little metal tabs on the back of the weights on yours, then the next option for me would have been to drill out a small hole and then find a screw that you could screw in that has a rather large sort of head on the back of it, large enough to sort of cover the hole on the inside of the belt, and then screw them in place. I think that would have worked equally as well, but as the tabs weren't broken on this one, I wanted to try and do as best job as I could and actually try and keep it all original. So that does seem to have worked. So let's move on to the next bit of this restoration. The air hose that I was sent with this figure is one of the later release versions of the air hose. As you can see here, it has a grey sort of circular section, which on the later version has a sticker of a compass. The original versions of this came with an actual compass. As you can see here, I picked this one off eBay while doing this restoration. I paid 99p for this, so you can still pick up the original ones pretty easily. But the one that came with this version is a later version, so what we need to do is to recreate this little sticker. Now I've done some searching online and I found a few images of this later version and quite a good image showing the actual sticker as it should be. So I spent a couple of hours in Photoshop recreating that and making it look as close to the original as possible. It's a fairly fiddly job just because there's a lot of numbers and digits that go around the edge of the compass, and you need to make sure that everything is in the correct place. So after a couple of hours work, I ended up with this, which is my recreation of the little dial that should be on there. It's as you can see, it is clearly a compass. Now what I've done is I printed out 3 different versions of this. I've got the one on the left is printed so that it's on a really nice white background, and then the other 2 are various shades of yellow, because obviously these stickers age a bit over time, and if I put a really white one on, it will look really obviously brand new and won't fit with this sort of slightly aged look of this Action Man. So I'm going to actually use the middle one, which is just a little bit yellowed. I'm just going to cut that out and stick that one in place. If you want to get your own versions of these, then do go to toy-polloi.com and you can download this PDF file for free and print your own. So if we go ahead and we'll just cut this out and stick it on, that little mouthpiece should look as good as new. So there we have my recreation, and it looks pretty good. I think you would be hard pushed to tell that that was a modern sticker. This is the one that's sort of slightly yellowed. I didn't use the pristine white one. I didn't use the very yellowed one. I think this matches the sort of the age of the plastic quite nicely. With the helmet, I normally like to try and repair the bits that I'm sent in, but this one is actually in pretty poor state, so I've decided to trade for a different one. As you can see, it's actually got the little bit where the hose on the back is snapped, and the front section where there's supposed to be a tap is also damaged. It's missing both the side panels where the sort of the little viewing panels, and the glass is missing. Some of this stuff could be repaired, but I think because it's got such bad damage to these major parts, I'm actually going to replace it. Now, I have traded with a subscriber for this one, so it's a big thanks to Joe Haynes, who subscribes to toy-polloi. But the problem with this one is it's actually too perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. Everything is exactly as it should be, and that makes for a pretty boring video. So at a recent toy fair, I picked up this one, which is almost identical, but has the major sort of issue that happens to all of these divers' helmets, which is the tiny little tap that goes here has snapped off. If we look at the mint one, you can see that there's a little tap here that you can turn by hand, and it does actually pull out. You can see it's just a tiny little sort of tap on a red peg, and is dropped into a little hole there on the side. So on this one, what's happened is that tap has been snapped off. So we're going to look at how we can replace that. Now, finding a replacement tap is going to be pretty much impossible. Actually, the guy that sent all these things in to me for restoration had actually cast a new version of the tap in resin. So you can see here that there's a little red version of that. So I'm going to use that to replace. But if you don't have that, then I've actually thought of quite a good solution, something that you could replace that with. And that is actually a tiny little Lego steering wheel. As you can see here, this is one of the small Lego steering wheels you can get. And these are very easy to find, and they just pop off this peg, if I can do that, like so. So there you can see I've managed to pull the steering wheel off this little peg here. And what I would plan to do if I hadn't got this little cast version is I would use that to make a little tap. As you can see there, that looks pretty good. By the time that was painted red and put in place, that would be quite a good substitute. But as we have this little cast version, I am going to replace this with the tiny cast version here, and I'll show you how I would do that, and you will be able to use the same technique for doing it with the Lego version. My plan to reattach this tap is actually to use another piece of Lego. I've used these before in quite a few restorations, and these are sort of longer flexible aerials that you can buy, and the end part of this aerial is a 2mm rod, and I think that will be ideal for sort of reattaching this little tap. So the plan is I'm actually going to drill a hole into where the tap has snapped off. On the original, it's only a small hole going in. I'm actually going to drill a hole right through onto the inside of the diving helmet, so that I can then slot this rod back through and use this sort of a little rounded end on the inside to stop the tap from falling out. We can then glue the little tap cast bit here onto the other end of the peg coming out here, so you'll still be able to rotate it, but in this instance you won't be able to pull it out. So unlike the original tap, you won't be able to lose it. It'll actually be firmly held in place, but you'll still be able to turn it. So first thing to do is to drill a hole. Now these plastic rods are 2mm, so I have a 2mm drill bit. I'm just going to carefully drill a hole where the original peg would have been. Now I've drilled the hole through, I can take a part of the little aerial that I've got here and go through the inside of the mask. If I slot that through, I should be able to slot that, and it will come out of the hole that I drilled. And because it's got that little rounded end, that peg is now not going to come out of this end. So what we can do now is to trim this rod down so it just comes out maybe a couple of millimeters, something like that, because it doesn't need to be that long. So something you can see something like about that. And I can just trim the end of this off. And as you can see there, we've now just got a little bit of the Lego rod coming through. So next job is to drill a small hole in the back of this cast version of the tap, and we can then glue that on, and that will no longer be able to fall out, but you'll still be able to rotate it. To make sure I only get a very small amount of glue onto the little tap there, I'm actually going to just squeeze some super glue out onto a bit of paper here, and then I'm going to use the end of my tweezers to carefully get a bit of glue on that and then dab it in the hole. This is a good way of making sure you only get a very small amount of super glue on there, because you really don't want a huge amount. There you go, that's just enough to fill the little indent that I've drilled in there. I can now carefully push this onto the tiny bit of Lego, and we'll let that set, and then everything should be good, and we should be able to still rotate the tap and it will not fall out. And there we have it, the glue is dried, so you can now see that you can still rotate this tap, and if you look inside you can just see the end of the bit of Lego there. So this tap is now in place and it will not fall out, unlike the original one. So I think that's actually probably a better fix than the original design. Obviously if you don't have a cast of the little tap, then I would suggest that Lego steering wheel painted red would look just as good, and I don't think you would even notice by the time this outfit was all put together. The last couple of bits I need to fix for this restoration are the diver's float. This one again is one that I got in a trade, and as you can see it's actually in quite nice condition. It has the string and everything, but the little flag that goes on the float is been torn slightly. So the way I'm going to repair that is just with a little bit of clear sticky tape. There's not really a lot you can do, so I'm just going to wrap a bit of sticky tape around and gently hold that in place. I think that's the only way that that can be fixed. And then also the little knife that goes on the leg. The knife and stuff is actually in pretty good condition, but the bits of elastic are a little bit tatty. One of them has snapped. That should be sewn together. So what I've done is I've got some elastic here that you can pick up at most haberdashery shops, and I'm just going to replace that and re-sew that little loop there. And then for the thinner bit of elastic that you can see here, you can get this stuff which is just shearing elastic. As you can see, again, I think this whole roll cost 99p, and I'm just going to replace that bit. The larger stuff is about 3mm flat elastic, so easy enough stuff to find. So none of these are particularly hard to fix, so they're just a little bit sort of time consuming, so I'm not really going to show you the processes involved, but it's pretty basic stuff. Put that there and sew it in a loop, and then tie that one in a loop and a bit of sticky tape, and that should be enough to fix all of those bits. And so here we have the fully restored Diver Action Man. As you can see, he's now looking pretty good. At the moment, he's actually wearing the original diving outfit that he came with. I've not bothered swapping out the new one that I bought, because by the time you actually put on all of the equipment, you can't really see the little few marks that are left on him, and he is looking pretty nice. So that is the original outfit, and the helmet and everything is looking pretty nice. I'm really pleased with how this came out. It was a lot of work. There's a lot of individual pieces that all needed repairing on him, not just only the Action Man figure himself, but all of the outfit. There were little bits broken all over the place. So the whole restoration has taken quite a long time, but as you can see, it is a pretty nice result. At some point I'd like to try and find a lake or a pond or something that's deep enough for me to actually go and try this, because the one great thing about this outfit is that it does actually work. You can drop him in water, he will sink to the bottom because of all the weights and stuff that are on his belt and his feet, and then you can blow air into the little sort of diving sort of mouthpiece here, and the hat will fill up and the Action Man will rise to the surface. So if I can find an area with deep enough water, I am going to try this, because I'm sure this will work still, and I think that will be a great fun thing to do. If you've enjoyed watching these restoration videos and would like to help out toy-polloi, then please check the links in the description for this video for my Patreon page, where you can find out how you can go about doing that. So this is the first figure from the Action Man Mega Restoration lot that I received recently that I have now finished. Now that he's done, I'm going to move on to the Sailor, who is in an equally terrible condition, and I'm still searching for parts for the Seawolf, which is proving to be a harder ship to find parts for than I would imagine, but I'm getting there, and that video will be along soon. So I hope that's all been of interest to you, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter and Facebook.